Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 33 in the Crunchy Cobra Jet series. Now, if you've been following along, you already know what's going on with this car, but if you're new to my channel, you may not know that I started with an original 69 black jade 428 Cobra Jet Mach 1 that was severely rusted, in really bad shape, and I basically have rebuilt that car using some of the original parts and a lot of Dynacorn parts. And my last video, I covered the installation of the roof and the rain gutters, which was pretty involved. There's a lot of welding on that, and it all turned out really nice. Now, I had also said in that previous video that I was going to work on the front of the car, and I've kind of changed direction on that. I've had some other work I had to do this week on other cars, and so I want to finish up the back of the car. And part of that is getting the latch brace welded in place. And another thing I want to finish are the seat pans. Now I have some information on that I want to show you as well in comparison on my original 69 Mach 1 that I have, just to show you the location and the welding that they did on those pans and what's going to be involved with that. So not very complicated, but I just want to go over some details with that. Now before we get started, I want to tell you that I also had a viewer send me a spot welder. They sent me a Stark 110 volt available on Amazon. I haven't used it yet. I will do a video on that in the future, but I'm grateful to them for sending me that spot welder. So it would have been nice if I had one previously, but as you know, I do a lot of plug welds and a lot of grinding. So let me show you some of that. I did go around the car and I took my grinder, I took a belt sander, and I knocked down the welds that I put in various places. Grinding doesn't bother me. I know that some people will get very frustrated with doing grinding and having to deal with that, but to me it's kind of like an art form, because you're recreating what should have been there, what was there previously, and if you have to sand and grind to get it there, that's fine. I really have no problem with that. As you know, I've been an aircraft mechanic for well over 30 years, and you do a lot of grinding on airplanes, and there is really nothing that bothers me about doing this work. Now, as I said, a lot of people don't like doing this sort of work, but honestly, it does not bother me. Okay, let's go take a look at my original Mach 1 and show you some of the details on the seat risers. So you've seen this before. This is the car I picked up late last year, and it is 98–99% rust free. These are the original pans. No repairs have been done on them, so pretty excited to show you that. I do want to look at this seat riser. So if you'll notice, on that side there are edge welds that they put in. Also pretty much that little spot right there, but everything else is a spot weld. You come to the inside, and here's some information that is just kind of interesting to me. This section of the seat riser, this flange, is spot welded to the inner rocker. So what that really means is, at least in my opinion, they had to spot weld this on first, because you can't get a tool in here to do this. So this had to be attached first, and then the outer rocker had to be put in place. Now along with that, you can see there's an edge weld there, and then spot welds across here. What I find odd, and maybe somebody can give me some detail on this, I'm not sure what this piece is. It looks like a secondary piece, but it doesn't have that on the replacement ones you get from Dynacorn. So here's like a brief cutout here, and this piece. Now I don't know what that does. I have not really looked into that very hard. The original car was rusted out so bad that I don't even think those were available in there. But I just thought that was interesting to show you that. So looking at the underneath of the car, I don't see anything in particular that stands out as to what that plate might be. Now of course your alignment has to be with the holes for the bolts to go through, so make sure you follow that up. I know they make different pans. I think it's for the Cougar, I think, that sit lower, so it gives you a little more clearance around the steering wheel. So just if you're looking at getting that, those are available. I'm not using those in this car. While I'm here, let me point out something else. I had somebody contact me this week about measurements for the core support and the interaction with the aprons, and they were concerned about the bolt holes lining up with the fender. Now what you'll see on this one in comparison to the other cars, the earlier cars, is these fenders have a big taper to them. So when you look down the line for the apron, basically it almost is making even contact, let's say, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so here at the front, and then it just gets wider and wider and wider at the back. And of course the hood is tapered and all that sort of thing, but those matter as far as the bolt alignment. And I know they were having trouble figuring those out and trying to get that alignment correct. And this of course is an original fender. This is an aftermarket fender. And there can be variations with the fenders themselves whenever it comes time to put them on. So just keep that in mind whenever you're doing these things. You will have difficulty with the aftermarket fenders, and if you can save your original, make sure you do that. Okay, now this explains what we were running into with the other panel. Just that Dynacorn doesn't make that cut out there. So that piece is in there, and I'm sure it adds strength for some reason. And you've also got little extra bracing inside for where the nuts will interact. So it was there, I just didn't see it. I really hadn't flipped these over. So yeah, if you wanted to, you could probably notch that out just to make it look original. Otherwise, the other thing I see different is these holes. Now these were already in there, and they're also in the passenger side one. So they've got those in place. I'm just going to weld those, but you know, as I said, the original had an edge weld up on top, and then this would have had an edge weld, and this would have been plugged. So I don't know why they don't put holes around the perimeter whenever they put them in the place that they're not supposed to be. But anyway, I'm going to make this fit, get it lined up and welded in, and of course, as I said, you got to get lined up on the hole. So I'll take a measurement just as a reference point, probably from that flange right there to the back edge on the original car, and I'll just replicate that with this one. So we'll get these welded in and get that latch bracket plate welded in as well. Okay, so what I've found is basically if I measure from that flange, it's 23 and 15/16 to the center of this hole, or roughly 36 to the very drop point of the front here. Now I know that this doesn't just sit in perfect. I see that there's making contact here on this flange and also on the face here, and this doesn't want to go down in. So I'm going to address that by trying to massage this flange a little bit inboard, this one inboard, to hopefully let it settle in. I know there's also people will be concerned with how this is sitting as far as square, and that is important, but ultimately it'll come down to getting the seat to sit right, and sometimes if you have to shim it to get it level, you may have to do that. You can try to get as close as you can though by massaging this panel. So I want to adjust this a little bit here and there. That's much better. Much better. Now what I want to do is put in plug weld holes, and I generally just eyeball these, usually 1.5 to 2 inches depending on where I'm putting them, but this lays out pretty nice right here. Put at least one up on this flange, And then this flange, I'll do the same thing. Put in some plug welds. Hold all that in place. Remove that one. And then I will fill these in as I mentioned before, and I'll do some edge welds up here on top just because that's how they looked. And I may do some edge welds on this piece. Maybe. Plug weld. Okay. Now to see if my hole puncher will punch holes in this. I kind of doubt it because this is much thicker metal. Let's find out. Woo! It did it. This way. That worked very well. One more. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so I have both seat risers welded in, and you know what's crazy about these is it's an optical illusion. So you look at these and you think, oh, they're crooked. They're sitting crooked, right? Well, they're not. If I take this framing square, put it against the inside of the inner rocker, they're dead on, square. If I back up and go with the alignment holes, again, they're dead on. And I'm going to show you the comparison on the original car. So here we are at the original, and what I found is this one is actually a little bit off. Now, it could be the stamping, the fact that the holes may still be on alignment. I don't know for sure. I can't get the square to fit inside of this very well. But let me see if I can line up those holes best I can. Yeah, it angles this in just a little. But I think what Dynacorn did is they decided, let's make sure these are square just for fitment. But when you, again, compare this to the original, there is a slight difference. So now I have both seat risers welded in, and even with a crusty seat, it already looks better. Now, I'm going to move to the back of the car. And I want to show you something that is a detail that may get overlooked. And that detail has to deal with the tail panel. So I'm going to show you this car first, and this flange right here. You see this sticks out, right? And the problem you run into if you're trying to replace this bracket is the interference with that flange. And let me show you the other car so you have an idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so here you can see on the original car the difference. That flange doesn't exist. And when it comes to this, this has a little relief cut in it that is supposed to interact around this flange. So that means I'm going to cut off the flange on the new car. Okay, as you saw, I took what I call the finger wheel. It's a corrosion wheel, available on Amazon, but these are things that get used a lot in the aircraft industry. And I cleaned up all this area on the back side of the tail panel because when I put this on, I'll have limited access to that. And all of this is going to get stripped off. I don't want any of this EDP coating on here, and I stripped the inside of this as well. But there's a problem. And the problem is the way this is made. So this, you can see, hopefully see, the drop from here to here and the drop from here to here. If you put this in based on that, the whole thing is crooked. It's all out of shape. And I went back and compared this to the original car, and I don't know, I don't know, you know, what they use for a template, but something is definitely off. I will fix it. I'll make it right, but I think I'm going to have to extend or change this angle. So this stuff is so thin and relatively flimsy overall until you get it welded in. Then it's a bit more solid. But I'm just going to rebend that and try to get the same, roughly the same location as the opposite side. So you know what? The more I look at this, the worse it gets. If you look at this hole right here, the hole itself is out of shape. The whole thing is like misstamped. These drops are different here, left and right, and if you try to square that up, you twist, the thing's twisted. The thing's twisted. You know what? I ain't using that. I'll find something else. Okay, I want to give you some more information on this. This is the original tail panel and the original bracket, and the reason we were replacing it is the bottom half is rusted off. Now, when you're putting this together, these tangs here actually slip between the tail panel and the rear trunk brace piece. So there is a space in the rocker or in the tail panel that I have, and these will fit down inside of that, which is fine. But have a look at this. As I said, this hole is like twisted. The whole thing is stamped out of shape. And then look at these drops right here. From there to that one. And look at this. Dead even. This whole thing, if I try to line it up on the tail panel that I had, this is again the original, to make both these tabs fit, that's how crooked that thing is. And you can't do anything with that. I mean, other than rebending the entire thing to try to make it work, there's just no way. There's just no way. So I'm going to salvage this one. It's a heavier metal. And again, I'll just cut off the bottom of those, or that piece, and merge the two together and just go from there. Okay, so I've shown you the differences between the original and the piece of junk. I mean, you can even look at how this sits on the table. That's sitting level. All these are level. This is all crooked. There should not be a gap underneath that thing. So there's no way this is a good product to have. I don't even know who makes that thing. So it's now a sacrifice. And that's all it's worth. Okay. The reason I did that is I want to get as close as I can. Look at that. Good grief. That's in that curve. Huge gap. Okay. But what I want to do is, if I'm going to make this piece out of the junk piece, wow, that's just horrible. I'm just going to cut these off in the same, basically same plane, much as I can. So it's good for that. Come on. Wow. I can't even. How about that? Ugh. Okay. I'll do the same thing, but the opposite. Okay. So I'll basically just weld these on, blend them smooth, trim them to match this width here, trim that to match, and I'll probably blast this, clean it all up, and we'll get it back in there. Okay, so I've cleaned up this piece, welded on the legs, and I've cleaned up the inside and sprayed it with self-etching primer. And all I have to do now is insert this into the gap between the tail panel and the trunk brace, or whatever you want to call this cross piece. I don't know what it's called. But just so you know, there is a gap right here. That's why those humps are out there in the tail pan. Basically, I can just slip this into those, and that's how they were made. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then I'll come out here and weld them into place. Now I do need to adjust this. I'll have to slide it up into the channel there, and I plan to weld that from the inside, simply because I had to drill the holes in the top and the face there, and so that'll make it easier just to weld them flush up against the inside of the tail panel. So this is where the gaps are. That takes care of that. I can adjust it a little bit side to side so that I can get on the center line of the gas door opening. And then this portion, just slide that up and clamp it into place to get ready for weld. Now the only thing I will do is do a side-to-side measurement just to make sure it's centered up like it should be on the opening here for the gas filler neck. You know, it is so nice to have an original car at your disposal. I wanted to make sure everything was in the right spot, and as you look at this, your mind kind of tells you that that opening right there and that opening right there should be the same, but they're not, because the trunk key has to line up with the oblong hole. So the offset is really about 1 inch. Let me show you what I mean. I guess technically I'll say 1/2 inch, because 1/2 inch one way is also 1/2 inch the other. So basically that edge right there is about 17 inches. If I do the same measurement coming this way, so you look at that, that's close to, well, that's about 17 3/4, maybe 18 inches. And what I mean is, when I say 1 inch, it's not really 1 inch. It's, if you move this side this direction 1/2 inch, it also moves this side 1/2 inch. So the compensation is the variance between those measurements there. You're not really 1 inch, it's really about 1/2 inch. But still, you want to make sure you're lined up on the keyhole. Okay, as they say, that's not going anywhere. And you know, I am really glad that I saved that piece. It's got the original numbers stamped on the side, which is just trivial at this point, but it's still nice to see that on there. And I think it's going to work out just fine. As I mentioned, the alignment hole is critical, but it is just weird that they make that have such an offset. So when you look at it from the basically down the tranny tunnel, it's offset slightly. There you go. But it is what it is. I'm just glad to have that piece in place, and also happy to have the seat risers done. Still some blending to do. Obviously there's some blending up here that's going to have to happen over there, and of course on top of the seat risers, but progress is progress. Okay, that'll be the end of this video. Now, as I said, I had intended to do all the front sheet metal, but I'm happy that I got all this stuff done in the back. So more than likely the next video on this car will be the front sheet metal. Now, I also have some other videos planned. I'm going to do a unboxing type of video on the R-Captain plasma cutter that they sent me, and they also sent me a MIG gun for the R-Captain 200. If you're interested in getting one of those, I have links in the description below that'll give you a discount. And I also have other links there for Amazon and Patreon. And I want to give a shout out to my patrons at this time. Without them, this would be hard to pull all this stuff off. I appreciate their support so much, and if you're interested in becoming a patron, again, there's a link down below, and you can check that out. Otherwise, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.